July the 25th, 2025. Guys, you're looking at the USGS earthquake information. And I've got this set to go back 7 days and for only the quakes that are 4.5 and higher to show up. And we've seen the big ones up into Alaska, right? If we pull this up, you can see there's much more than what you think. And we remember the 7.4, but guys, just when was it? Let's see, 23rd, 24, yes, 24th. Another addition into the 6.6. But look at all of the quakes, and all of these are 4.5 or higher. There's 217 quakes on the map. We talked about the fault zone and all of that, but what I want to talk about is something, maybe the reason why, and I've looked at this stuff for a long time. Back in the day, when we had the big Fukushima quake, guys, I tracked in about 3 different X flares going off at different times. We were in solar maximum. And as they struck Tokyo or Japan that afternoon, just timed it perfect, coming in, the impact time and all, that's when we had the big quake that knocked out the Fukushima plant and had the big tsunamis and all. So we, started realizing back then one of the reasons we had the big quakes. Now, we're not having a lot of solar activity right now. There's some coronal holes, but a few months ago we were getting very active with big sunspots and things like that, and you could see it. And I've seen actually coronal mass ejections come in and really hit the northern hemisphere hard along the Aleutian channel there. Anyway, what we're looking at, let me back this out just a little further. There we go. The big quakes. You got one right here. This was a 6.6 down in southeast of Matuutu, Wallis, and Futuna. It's down in this area north of New Zealand. But the big ones are in the northern hemisphere. Why do you think that is? And we're not seeing the one of the things that causes it, and that's that extreme solar activity hitting our shields and compressing it. And these red lines you're seeing are the cracks in the shell of the crust. What did happen last year, do you remember? They said, and I don't have the report here, but I do have the video, and I'll try to find it and link it in the description of this one. But I went back and we were talking about the reporters coming out of Europe were talking about that the intertropical convergence zone had shifted north 151 miles. Now, that was a year ago. No one said anything about it. Stopped shifting, right? Now, what is the equalizer between the Earth and the Sun and the tilt of the Earth? It's the moon. It's put there as a balancer. Our Father knew exactly what was happening, and I'm going to tell you something that some of you understand, and the ones that don't, just think about it. But there was a long time ago, there was what they call a catabo, the overthrow in Hebrew Bible. And after that, it's when Genesis started, because the earth became void. Remember, it wasn't void. If you properly translate the Hebrew, the earth became void. How did and why did it become void? Probably the same reason Noah's flood. Civilizations had become very corrupt on the planet, and this goes back to ancient civilizations, by the way. And that's why they keep finding older and older dates on things like the pyramids and all of that. Anyway, the moon was put in, and if you go back and try to look at the oldest information you can find about the night sky, there was a while that they didn't mention the moon. Then suddenly the moon started getting mentioned. It's just very old information, but why would that be? Why was it put there for a specific reason? Of course it was. Our Father doesn't make mistakes. Let's talk about that reason. Now, the earth is tilted. We know that. We know it. It tilts in the winter and in the summer and all that, but it has a precession of, 26,000 years or 28,000 years, and that tilt is controlled by where our moon is. so are 75% of the Earth's surface, called the tides, is controlled by the moon. But if something were to happen to our moon, everything would go into total disarray. You understand what I'm saying? We just had an update here in our Quakes. Anyway, the moon was put there because the Earth had went into a complete disaster. It had become void and without form, and to balance it because it was wobbling so bad. Before that overthrow, the seasons were perfect. I mean, if you were in an area where it felt like spring all the time, that's how it was. There was not the big storms and all of that. The seasons were perfect. And so with that overthrow and the wobbling and the void that happened to the Earth in the first Earth age, or the one that we know about before this one, there had to be something to stop that destruction. And the moon came into place as this balancer. And you can look it up. What controls, it controls the tides, the full moon and all that, but it also, look up the tilt, that precessional tilt of our planet is controlled by the moon. So we got the intertropical convergence zone moving north 151 miles a year ago. That means one of two things. One is the Earth is either tilting further down to the south. If you're looking at this map, if the convergence zone, which is created by the heat of the sun and the angle, then the moon is off balance just a little bit, or it's trying to continue to balance. In other words, there's pressure being put on the plates in the northern hemisphere right now because there's a struggle in this balance. We've seen the magnetic north drift all over around the North Pole, Russia, Canada, all the above, right? And again, here's some more quakes popping up. You see the red one right there? There's pressure on our fault zones. These are the big ones, though. And with that, if the moon starts to shift or is forced to shift to try to counterbalance the off tilt of the rotation of the Earth and the tilt, if something happens in that, then it's going to affect things like where the intertropical convergence zone is. Now, if you want to research, is the moon getting closer or further away from the Earth, going over hundreds and hundreds of years, and you'll see that it's slightly getting further away. But do you know right now that it's almost in perfect balance? And there's a way to tell it. Listen to what I'm telling you. When you have an eclipse, why or how, what would be the odds of the moon being the exact size looking at it from the Earth perspective to create a total eclipse? So how would you know if the Earth was moving away? Because, now we don't know the timing of it, that dot that the moon creates in front of the sun would become smaller and there would not be a total eclipse. But in the perfect balance, which may be changing because of what we're seeing on this pressure of the northern hemisphere plates and the drifting of the intercontinental convergence zone, something's going on with the moon. Is it trying to counterbalance something else that's happening to our planet between the gravitational pull of the sun and our Earth? They're connected together. But the moon was put in place to create a balance between that wobble that was created during that destruction of the first Earth age, guys. Again, Genesis, you have to really understand that it's talking about not the Earth was created void, but it became void. God did not create anything void and ugly. It became that way. And so what we're dealing with, I think, is a shift between the gravitational pull of the Earth and the sun and the balance, not the pendulum, but a counterweight that the moon creates to adjust it. In other words, if it ever went back to perfect balance, the Earth did, to where we're not having that tilt, the seasons would go back to being perfect, kind of like the garden. And that would be amazing. Who wants to see tornadoes and all of that crap, right? But there's going to be a new earth and a new heaven. We know it. What I'm talking about is, why are we seeing the quakes now so strong and located where in the areas that we're seeing them without the solar activity that normally occurs when this happens. And when you have tilts and gravitational pulls, you're going to have magma movement under the crust of the Earth, anywhere from, Yellowstone to anywhere on the planet. And if this stress continues, you may see dormant volcanoes start to emerge, even the submarine volcanoes underwater. But this is, I don't have a lot of information about it, but from what I'm looking at, been doing it a long time, this is what I'm seeing. And I'm putting it together I do have more information. And I'm going to put it into a PDF like I do when I do the longer videos, to where it makes a little bit more sense. But right now, I think we're dealing with that battle between the Earth, the Sun, and the balancer in between. And that's why we're seeing this crustal pressure. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.